I know. I know, I know. You want to get out on the hill. So do I. But it's still sunny outside, so let's make the most of our time anyway. The topic for today, how do we coach and teach women? Different kind of question. I've got some amazing cameo appearances of some folks along the lines in this video. The video is a little bit longer than usual. It's about 13 minutes long. Hopefully you find the content thought-provoking. And at the very end, I've got a punchline for you. Okay, enjoy.
Well, I'm Jennifer Simpson. I'm a PSI team member, and I'm currently teaching in Aspen and spend my summers in Minnesota.
Tricky question. Is it tricky? Is it necessary? But just this question, how do you teach women when you're out on the hill?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I think that people come in with assumptions that we have to do something different when you have a women's group or a lesson that has a couple of ladies in it. And honestly, for me, as a female, I want someone to approach me and find out what I want to know and what I want to do and figure out who I am as a person. So I take that same approach into a lesson. I want to know who I'm skiing with and what they want and how they work best. And I really just try to meet that person no matter what their gender is, where they are.
Thanks, Jennifer. Awesome. Now I'm going to chat with Jen Metz, who is a PSAA examiner and a trainer and ski pro at Vail. All around really smart lady and a mentor of mine. And that's going to be followed by a couple more cameos, one of which is up on the hill, so the video is a little bit shaky.
I think that we have to be careful as professionals in this industry that we don't overly generalize some of the differences that have been proposed to us along the way. You know, it's really easy to say that, you know, women are smaller and women aren't as strong, but gosh darn, I can find instances that are very different.
When I listen to you talk, I just think of potential. I think of potential of the individual and wanting to be careful not to come to it with any preconceived bias or assumptions. And really for this video, if I had any goal at all with this video, it's to get people from kind of the opposite ends of the spectrums, kind of these broad-based assumptions of a man and a woman, and bring them to the middle, which I see as potential for the individual, the person. And then when we come more to the middle, then we can kind of dance around the fringes a little more and get specific, possibly with what some differences may be. But if we can just bring everybody more to deal with the individual, I think just with that in itself, we're probably going to be better off. You think?
I am all over that. Absolutely. I think that we need to look at all the people that we are working with much more so as individuals than as, having gender specific tendencies.
How do we deal with this type of topic that can be a button pusher, that could just turn a switch off with somebody who might not be interested?
You know, Deb, I tap into a lot the fact that you and I have created a great deal of success for ourselves in this industry. And it wasn't because we were just women. It's because we insisted on having a certain level of both competence and confidence. And, you know, I speak for myself in saying that I probably have had to weigh a little heavier on I've had to pay more attention to the confidence side of it. And my tendency is to be a little over-prepared in order to do that, so that I feel like it supports my competence, you know, that I have both of those there. And I don't know, in all honesty, if that's a gender quality or if that's just more a personal quality for me, right? I mean, we bring so much to any game, it's hard to know where to draw that line.
I'm Josh Fogg. I'm a member of the PSIA ASI national team. I'm the training manager over for the ski and snowboard schools of Aspen.
Josh, it has been an honor sharing the mountain with you the last couple days.
Thanks, same. It's always an honor skiing with you.
So fun.
Yeah.
So I got a really funky question for you, Josh.
Alrighty.
How
I love a funky question.
I love it. I know. You like the challenge of it. How do you teach women on the hill?
Oh yeah, right. That's a good one. It's funny. I've actually always kind of struggled with that question, mainly because, you know, in my thinking, it's great to be a very empathetic person, but there are certain things that I don't think I can experience. So the empathy is extremely hard, and a lot of those things can circle around gender specifically. And so rather than to be my authentic self, I really look at the person instead of the gender or any, if they're a man or a woman, but really just trying to look at who is this person and respond to this person in this group. Trying to be aware of just basic decencies that we treat each other, being aware of not talking over each other, and trying to develop that rapport with the person to make the clinic or the lesson match them.
I love it. We can come to a lesson or a situation with some bias or some very broad generalizations, and that can get us into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if I think about it, like, I'm teaching a woman, therefore I got to do these things, that I'm just gonna misrepresent who that person is.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
You bet. Thank you.
Some of the things that have really caught my mind and really that I'm more intrigued with in the last handful of years have to do more so with kind of the physiological differences of the brain, some of the sociological differences, emotional differences. I find that I think, what was it that I heard in the seminar last year, that it has to do with brain function, and that these are all tendencies, but women have a tendency to use both sides of their brains a little bit more effectively, and in that sense are good problem solvers. They take in information intuitively. That sociologically there's more of a tendency to tend and befriend, and so I think that they form groups really well and are very supportive in those group settings. That when it comes to problem solving, there's a lot more need for kind of some verbal mediation. In other words, to think ahead about a situation and how maybe we're going to approach it, as opposed to just jump in and try to physically overcome it. And I try to pay more attention to being the facilitator of their setting on the snow. I just took a fascinating workshop in experiential driven learning, and some of the tenets that help me is to keep in mind that with everybody, and especially women, but it relates to everybody, to make sure that I'm enhancing their expectations, really setting them up for potentially a higher level of success than they might initially approach a situation. I think that sometimes there's that confidence competence thing that women come at a situation a little differently than men, and giving them a little bit of boost in their confidence, giving them as much autonomy as I possibly can, helping them recognize that if there's an external focus of what they're trying to do with their equipment or how they're trying to approach the hill, that it allows them to find their own internal focus rather than me telling them how something should feel or exactly how their body should work, because we're all built very differently, and especially men and women, if they do have some physiological differences, it helps them find that. I think it's more important to find what everybody has in common, and then what differences that they do have, let them know that those differences aren't necessarily deficits, but they can be viewed as and used as in terms of strengths. And ways that we shape the environment. I mean, that's our role as much as anything, Deb, right? I mean, we don't just teach, we manage the entire environment, every aspect of it. And
absolutely. All of this said, Jen, so what about women's seminars? Because women's seminars are out there, women's programs, and a lot of people are involved, and some people may wonder why. And do you think they're relevant these days? What's your view on that?
Oh man, I think that they are absolutely as powerful as ever. And especially with what we were just talking about here, of not making preconceived ideas and generalizations, of that we don't have to accommodate accommodate women by specializing the environment. Now we need to, more than anything, it's about what they bring when they come together. If one of the things I was speaking of earlier, that the social tendencies are much more to tend and befriend than to attack and conquer an environment. And oh my God, that creates such a supportive environment. And I know that when I'm in that environment, I feel so pulled into the group, as much because of all that we have in common, and not necessarily as women in this industry, but just women in all the things that we go through in life, whether it's the relationships to each other, the relationships to our parents, to our children's, etc. It's really fun to be in a place where we can have fun with that. We can laugh about it. We can, take what we're doing with a certain amount of seriousness, but not take ourselves overly serious, kind of laugh at ourselves a little bit. It's a very safe environment for that. And so I think that that's the part that is still surprisingly fun, is how supportive and the energy that comes out of the environment.
Hi, I'm Dave Lyon from the PSI Alpine team and Stevens Pass Alpine Club. Thanks, Deb, for asking me if I do what I do different for coaching female athletes or women athletes or girls. And I've given it a lot of thought, and I'm not sure that I do anything different to coach women. But what I do is coach everybody the same way. And that way of coaching is based on trust and respect, not on intimidation and fear. It's my belief that you don't need to raise your voice, you don't need to yell, you don't need to snap, you don't need to lose your cool to get people to do what you want them to do. I think if you trust them and treat them with respect, they'll really progress and do things very well. Thanks for the question. Hope this helps, and have fun.
One last question. Can you think of some very specific equipment type approaches that you've been successful with when dealing with different body types? I'm going to say body types generally, small people, big people, then gender so much.
Yeah, a really, really skillful boot fitter.
Yeah, agreed.
In other words, I can watch somebody ski and I can get a little of the going, and not try to make gender assumptions. Yeah, all of our individual morphology is so amazingly different.
Yeah.
And it's not just Q angle. It's joint mobility, it's lower leg to upper leg, proportions. There just is so much. And so I take the video, I ask the questions, I do a little self-inquiry, I talk to the person I'm skiing with, and then I take all of that and myself and them, and we go to the boot fitter.
Jen, thank you. I could listen and learn from you forever. All right, I want to make a final point here. It has to do with skill, and skill has nothing to do with gender. Skill has to do with access and opportunity and skillful coaching and instruction. It has to do with repetition. It doesn't have to do with gender. So let's take an example. Back in the old days, where women might not have had the same encouragement, the same access to coaching to learn how to throw a ball, they may have been ridiculed for throwing like a girl. And what I'd say is, no, you don't throw like a girl, you throw like somebody who hasn't been taught how to throw. Skill and gender have nothing to do with one another. I think that's really important that we remember that when we go onto the hill. Okay, the punchline of the video. We began with the question, how do we coach or teach women? Ultimately, the question is, how do we connect to people? How do we connect to the individual? How are we going to be more effective coaches, more effective instructors? It has to do with finding out who the individual is, connecting with them. There can be fearful, skillful, knowledgeable, beginning men and women. It's not a gender thing, it's an individual thing, and it's our job to get to know and connect with that individual. Enjoy this Einstein quote that I'm ending with, and thanks for watching.